Welcome back to the X-Files, where today we open up a very different and very romantic X-File as we once again leave the bounds of Weekly Shonen Jump. Let's not waste any time and boot up this file. Full name, Gal Maid and Villainess, Only Milady's Happy End Will Win, or Gal Maid to Akuyaku Reijo Ojo-sama no Happy End Shika Katan. Created by Kagi. Start date February 22nd, 2024. End date June 26, 2025. Total chapters 15, split into 3 volumes. To set the stage, what we'll be talking about today is a Yuri romance manga rooted in modern tropes. We have an actual isekai, something I'm very unfamiliar with, apart from watching a few noteworthy anime in the genre. We also have gyaru, maids, and an otome game-like setting, a type of dating sim game usually targeted at a female audience. The person behind all of this is Kagi, who from my digging has been active as an artist since 2009 on Pixiv, with them drawing cute girls, many of which are in romantic entanglements with each other, and there's the occasional SD Gundam thrown in there too for variety. Over time, it seemed they got heavily into shipping Yui Hirasawa and Nodoka Manabe from the popular series K-On!, which spawned some small comics and later on full doujinshi. Notably, we have Kimi ni Hidamari no Jinsei ga Arankoto o from August of 2016, and then Kuruwasete Nodoka-chan from December of 2017, which I don't think I can show the cover of. Finding out about all of this was pretty interesting. The Pixiv helped a lot, but also fans of Girls Love manga do not fuck around when collecting and archiving things. They have my utmost respect as they helped me a ton through the creation of this video. This included collating entire catalogs of magazine issues and what's serialized within these magazines, which led me to Comic Yurihime issue 1 of 2024, published in November of 2023, that features Kagi's first officially published work, Villainess and Gal Maid, or Akuyaku Reijo to Gyaru Maid. It's the one-shot version of what we'll be covering today. As a short aside, this one-shot was also previously a doujin work and popped up in the 143rd Comitia event held in February of 2023. In this iteration, it was much shorter and a bit more comedy focused, with Kagi improving on it a lot before it would reach the pages of Yurihime. I'll avoid digging into specifics on the one-shot itself for now, as it's pretty much one-to-one with the actual series it would spawn, but it seems it was liked enough that the editorial over at Yurihime decided to push it for serialization, and I can see why. It's cute, Kagi's artwork is great, and it exhibits popular trends. Gal Maid and Villainess wouldn't be serialized within Comic Yurihime though, or any physical magazine for that matter, but the web manga platform Ichijin Plus, published by Ichijinsha, who are responsible for Comic Yurihime as well as many other publications. Ichijinsha, the publisher overall, is very different to what I usually cover on this channel, with their main 3 physical magazines being Comic Yurihime, a Yuri magazine, Monthly Comic Rex, a shonen magazine with a focus on romance and ecchi works, and probably most well known, Monthly Comic Zero Sum, a josei magazine. While many manga published in these magazines or platforms might seem perfectly ordinary to you, including Gal Maid, please keep in mind that a large portion of what I cover on the channel is from Shonen Jump. My perspective might be a little different, and normal things may come across as novel to me or my audience. So with all of that established, let's dive into the manga itself. Gal Maid and Villainess begins with our introduction to Serena Flamel, a gyaru or gal who has been reincarnated into one of her favorite otome games, I Dedicate This Miracle to Your Future, or Anasasa for short. It's a game where you, as the heroine, navigate life in a noble academy, granted entry despite your status due to your magical proclivities. As far as fantasy worlds go, it's pretty light, only having a few creatures and basic magic, with most of its appeal presumably coming from the noble background and all the rich boys you can romance. Serena, though, is not the heroine of this story, but a lower-class noble who has been sold off to the Salazbright family to work as a maid. While she remarks she can easily make friends, she ends up in the employ of Almelia Salazbright, the villainess of the game, a stern, dark, and brooding figure who bounces off of her bright optimism immediately, a person known for her terrible personality, trust issues, and excessive pride, not bowing down or apologizing to anybody. Serena knows that as the villainess, she always ends up suffering a bad end within the game, being abandoned by everyone and falling into ruin. But seeing this more intimate side of her as her maid, things begin to change, and it's during a formal event that another high-rung noble begins to gossip and conspire against Elmia. They end up cutting her dress in order to disgrace her, but Serena fights back, going above her station to defend her lady, which garners Elmia's respect. And later, under the moonlight, as they discuss what has transpired, she opens up to her maid. Elmia is in fact quite fond of Serena. Her bizarre mannerisms and her uselessness and inability to do her maidly duties are something she parallels to herself. Seeing her lady laugh and smile, Serena lies captivated, and from this point on, vows to make Elmia happy, to find the route where she doesn't fall into ruin. Here we have to establish the status quo a bit more, as this event spawns a misunderstanding. Though perhaps it isn't quite one, it's a little bit unclear. Serena's declaration to Elmia sounded like one of love, I will make you happy, as in a partner kind of marriage sense, while Serena in her otome game-addled mind, mixed in with her gyaru enthusiasm, means it in a more general way. Though it also seems like she just genuinely does like Elmia too, and is very straightforward with her words. Seeing the Tsundere Elmia crumble into dust against this well-meaning radiant Gal is exceptionally heartwarming at the beginning, and the expressions drawn by Kagi does a lot of great work here to get that across. So the core premise involves a spunky, straightforward puppy dog of a maid and the mean on the surface but secret tsundere noblewoman with some miscommunication but genuine connection between them. This is all then further complicated with the introduction of Estella, the actual protagonist of Anasasa, who, as a fan of the game, Serena naturally adores. Knowing how much Estella struggles throughout the game and wanting Elmia to get a good end, she thinks them getting along would solve these problems through Elmia giving Estella her backing. Though there's a wrinkle in this plan, Elmia being absurdly jealous of Serena's adoration of Estella. The dynamics between the three is a lot of fun initially, filled with miscommunications that come from this place of genuine enthusiasm from Serena to help and also be a bit of a nerd. The comedy elements this introduces, like seeing Elmia get absurdly angry to the point of coming across as a yandere, or Estella crumbling and getting flustered by her involvement in this non-existing love triangle, are very funny and also help serve to build up these characters and their rapport between each other. The dynamic takes good advantage of the initial premise and Serena's role as a gyaru and fan of Anasasa. In most situations like this, you'd have a genuine love triangle or a character that's romantically attached to multiple choices. A lot of shonen romances, for instance, would build a harem or see the main character ping-pong between girls. Though here, Serena's love is very different. There's some nuance there that makes it more fun and funny in how everything has been set up. Gal Maid and Villainess isn't solely a romantic comedy though, as more elements are sprinkled in as it progresses, like the inclusion of sword fights and magic, fitting the game's fantasy-light world. These come into play in latter arcs as it introduces more of the male noble cast, the otome game boys you'd usually date if you were playing the game. Chief among them is Lord Leonadia, who Elmia is engaged to, though both aren't happy with this engagement and there's clear mutual dislike between them. Through this relationship, you can see how the actual game of Anasasa might play out, with Elmia being the clear evil villainess who you'd have to defeat in order to help this young lord. In reality though, her feelings and the situation is much more complicated, with her capitulating to this political marriage despite having no interest, as well as an interest in women, showing no sign she even likes any of the young lords. Serena, bumbling forward with the desire to keep Elmia safe so she can reach a good end, sees that it would be beneficial for the two to marry. The status of her and Emilia both being ladies and their gap in status is also acknowledged here too. Anything between them is a fantasy, something this world is ill-equipped for. So she wishes Elmia to be happy even if it's through this arranged marriage, which conjures a rift between the two girls. There's some more usage of the classic misunderstanding trope used here, but it's also a gateway into the series' core exploration of its ideas, namely how Elmia's pride intersects with the idea of love and how love is trampled over in favor of what's right and proper. Since Gal Maid and Villainess is a cancelled work, there's a limit to how much information we get on its characters, though there's enough present where I feel Elmia gets quite a lot of fleshing out. Starting off, we have a few of her central traits: her status as a noble and villainess according to the series, and her prideful or arrogant attitude. While she may just be naturally quite prideful or aloof in a social sense, making her come across as more combative than intended, it's likely her position as a high-ranking noblewoman has reinforced these traits. Her pride and arrogance are a defense mechanism. It's commented on in the series over and over that she isn't close with anyone. She has to maintain a certain level of prestige, though she may also be afraid of sharing who she really is on the inside. It takes a literal out-of-this-world force of boundless positivity and patience in Serena to drag that out. And while that's the literal thing that happens within the series, in a romantic sense, is that not how one might view their partner in a lot of circumstances too? I really like how these two intersect and the general concept of their relationship. It's cute and romantic. Serena chipping away at Elmia bit by bit helps her exterior crack, and on a trip back from a ball, the noble's carriages are assailed by monsters. In haste to prove themselves, Leonardo fights back, though this leads to a blast being hurled at our main duo, which Serena blocks just in the nick of time at the cost of her hand being blown off. It's a surprising development, her losing her hand, which Elmia takes extremely hard. How the manga illustrates this in a comedic way, censoring the hand with a text bubble initially, is also quite cute and clever too. Fearing this may cause a rift between the two after Lord Leonardo offers to take care of Serena for his fault, including her becoming a concubine, we'll touch on that a bit later, Serena decides she's going to use her outside knowledge of the game's magic system to heal her own hand. Usually I'd find this development a little sketchy or disappointing, but the manga does go to great lengths to explain the process enough, explore the ramifications of why she's doing this, and show that it takes great strain and effort. Serena is ultimately doing this, choosing this painful, harder path in order to make Elmia smile. Seeing how much someone is willing to work so hard for her, Elmia then begins to change drastically as well. The hand does grow back, which infuriates Leonardo, seeing this as a trick done by one of the lower class, one aimed to harm his status, a mere maid attempting to swindle him out of his own riches. Knowing this is so far from the truth, Elmia then strikes back, cancelling their engagement. Leonardo, out of pride, scorns Serena's selfless act, one aimed to help all involved, a pride he can get away with keeping as a male character of high status. And while he can show his pride freely, characters like Elmia, who are a woman, can't really, and they get labelled as something like a villainess, though conversely, this whole endeavour is the event that breaks Elmelia's pride somewhat. Seeing how much Serena has done for her, she ends up apologizing to her, something she hasn't done throughout the entire series and is known to never do. Gal Maid and Villainess, through its world, posits a core thesis. There are rules and codes, codes for nobles to follow, codes for women to follow. You must act this way or that, you must retain your honor and pride, bow down to those who are superior, be they in rank or through gender. We see throughout the manga how restrictive this is and how these labels and systems codify Elmia as this reprehensible and feared character, fated to be disliked because she doesn't quite conform, though she's still bound to archaic systems where her fate and happiness are at the whims of others. She is bound by nobility, knows nothing beyond it until Serena. As powerful as the systems we create are, ultimately they are human-made and can be counteracted by another simple human feeling: love. Elmia in the end is able to change through this love, the love Serena has shown to her and her growing love for Serena. Her pride shifts from something used to defend her and her station, mixing with her personality to form a blade of capability. Elmia is naturally outspoken, naturally powerful, and wants to fight against those who would oppress or pick paths for her. I also love how she adopts Serena's gyaru style of clothing, wrapping her overcoat around her waist like you would a jumper. In general, I think there's some interesting parallels to gyaru culture, fashion, and fighting back against norms and pre-established rules. I am not super well versed in the gyaru subculture overall, but I think there are parallels to make here which are worth at least mentioning. Elmia now knows what she wants to pursue and doesn't care if it goes against these pre-established rules, be they about how a noble would act, how a woman would act, or especially how these two elements intersect. which is shown through how she might love and be engaged with Serena, a relationship which would violate the status quo in multiple ways. Both are classes apart, both are the same gender, and Elmia would gain nothing politically for her family by partnering up with her bizarre chirpy maid. Still, the series builds on this through having one more arc to solidify these ideas, one where Elmia gets a second betrothal from one of the other big noble boys, Prince Edward of Regania. The question of does Elmia need the backing of others, notably a high-ranking nobleman, to prosper is asked here, I feel. And I don't feel it's that subtle in what it's getting at. Do women need husbands to protect and take care of them to flourish, as the status quo here demands? Estelle comes back in this arc briefly, also having been offered assistance from another of the main male romance options, though she ended up turning them down, feeling as though she should attain strength on her own accord. She doesn't want to be bound by some guy, she can prove herself on her own terms, and I love the idea that even as the protagonist, she's choosing her own path, presumably an aromantic route for herself. Should the series have lasted longer, perhaps it could have delved into this idea more and how character and player agency can interact with female agency too. As part of this scene, Estelle also has an absolutely brilliant line, which I think encapsulates the series a little bit. It might be irresponsible of me to say this, but I truly believe that even the stubbornness of nobility is something the two of you can overcome. Prince Edward is undoubtedly skeezy, taking advantage of Elmia's position and her not quite solidified ideals to back her into an engagement, though there is a flaw in his plan which is tied to the country he's from, one that follows the law of strength. If someone were to defeat him in a duel, then this new engagement would be annulled. Through deliberating over and over, Serena realizes Elmia would be happiest with her, so she engages Edward in a sword duel. A thrilling battle begins, one where we have a clear underdog and the stakes are high. Everything in the series rides on this battle. Serena uses her knowledge of the game's magic system once more to push through her limits, and through a declaration of love, with Elmia telling her to make me yours, she is propelled to victory. In the end, even though much hardship lies before them in all sorts of forms, it's a storm they're prepared to weather together, and this is an instance where love triumphs over all, even as the series comes to a premature close. Moving on to discuss the series in a general sense, what does it do well, and as this is the Valentine's Day upload of the year, how does it tackle its romantic elements? The first thing I want to comment on are its characters and character dynamics. I think the core duo and the trio that's made when Estelle joins leads to some great character building, as well as fun interactions, usually for jokes. As mentioned prior, Serena's outsider knowledge and admiration of these characters is used for great comedic effect, but also as motivation for her to get to know and change or aid Elmia and Estelle. While a lot more could have been done with this in regards to jokes or commenting on the game itself for otome games generally, I feel it's at least considered and engaging throughout. The fact that the main duo also does grow through the course of the series makes this satisfying despite it ending relatively quickly, which leads me to how the series approaches love. To be loved is to be changed. One of the greatest things about love is its capacity to aid change and growth. You should ideally find someone who not only appreciates you for who you are, but also wants to support your growth and grow alongside you. I feel Serena exhibits this in wanting Elmia to have a happy ending, though through the course of the series she moves from doing it in a very conscious way, matchmaking or trying to aid in her hooking up with the male characters, something the game would facilitate or enforce, to realizing her just being around Elmia is having an effect on her growth. Elmia's supposed negative traits, her arrogance and pride, only seemed that way due to the box she was forced into, and when someone is there to help her flourish, they evolve into confidence and power. This manifests into a staunch belief in herself as well as the person she loves. I really dig Elmia as a character and think that should we have had more to the series, her development would be even better. Her breaking through her defensive walls with Serena's help leads to a really lovely sentiment about others helping us bring about positive change to who we are. On a pure entertainment level, seeing her tsundere high and mighty attitude crumble into her being a sobbing emotional mess is also super satisfying. It gets a lot of points from me for executing this trope well. Another aspect of the series I brought up through my discussion of its story is of status and how that intersects with love. Since the series is a more fantasy-driven one, focusing on nobles with draconian systems at play, see the multiple arranged marriages, they offer up some great barriers for our heroines to overcome, though also let us critique these various systems too. The power dynamics of who is above who on multiple levels exist. They are toyed around with for fun in some instances with Serena and Elmia, but are also used to create friction. I do think the enforced marriages from the male characters or the expectations from society act as a great conceptual villain for a girls' love series. They need to beat the status quo, one which wants these ladies to pick one of the many beautiful boys to protect them, at the cost of their own choices and autonomy. Throughout, it shows many times that these characters do not care all that much about Elmia, who she is, what she wants, or even Serena for that matter too. Leonadia grumbles like a child at the arranged marriage, even when Elmia puts up with it, yet he does nothing to change his fate. Also, he mentions concubines at points. This whole arranged marriage deal is by far a worse deal to Elmia than it is to him. His offering to Serena to be a concubine at one point and his later tantrum at his pride being hurt also shows how easily he's willing to throw around these ladies in multiple contexts. Edward also commodifies Elmia in his arc, distilling her into a few traits which he finds appealing, her outspoken nature and strength which would boost his image. There's no love there, it's all for political and self-serving purposes. None of this is tackled with any exceptional depth, though enough is there where it feels considered and it aids in enriching the relationship between our main couple. There are totally some criticisms you can lobby at all of this though too. The male characters are all pretty cartoonishly bad, which can be the point, though them being a bit more well-rounded would make this all the more compelling and hit harder in the long run. Usually with these videos I'm a bit more adept at discussing why a series might have been cancelled. While there tends to be a consistent few things like lack of sales, lack of interest, etc., it is important to acknowledge that different magazines will have different reasons why a series gets cancelled, or different X thresholds if you will for how different series might sell or how popular different series are. From what I've heard generally, Yuri manga does lack promotion. They aren't as advertised as much in a lot of cases as other series, partially because there's less of them and they're lumped into specific places. Things like Boys Love sees a lot more eyes on it, as does most heterosexual romance series too. If they sell more than Yuri manga, then companies are going to push for those instead. Even if this is a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy kind of deal, if you don't promote them in the first place, then a lot of people aren't going to know they even exist and then they won't even buy them. Something I did notice with Gal Maid specifically though is you have this magazine Yurihime full of Yuri manga. Since there aren't too many platforms or magazines that cater to Yuri solely, I'd assume it would be quite competitive, though in this instance, even though Gal Maid published a one-shot in the magazine, the serialization was regulated to an online platform only. Already I feel like this would limit who would get to see this manga or read it, which is not great. While I'm not the most knowledgeable on Yuri manga, something I have paid attention to is the number of Yuri manga that do get cancelled. Fans will be quick to point these out and the list grows more and more. For recent ones I've heard mentioned, we have Marrying the Dark Knight for Her Money, Prism, The Flower Princess of Sylph, Killing Me, Sukiban to Tenkosei, The Role of the Femme Fatale, and I've also heard that while it did run for a while, Naki Nagi did meet with a bit of a premature end too. I haven't done full research into all of these, so do take what I've just said with a few grains of salt, though alongside Shonen Jump, when I do hear about cancelled manga, it's usually Yuri series. There have been some recent exceptions to all of this though, thankfully. Love Bullet, which was supposedly meant to be cancelled, saw an outcry of support through people sharing it around on the internet, leading it to pushing past a potential cancellation. The guy she saw was interested in wasn't a guy at all, started to my knowledge as a self-published work, and it gradually ended up getting supported, leading it to a lot of success. It's even getting an anime adaptation now. At the end of the day, there are people who want to read these works, and there should be a space and market for Girls Love and Yuri manga to flourish, so support these authors and the official releases if you can. The prior mentioned examples are proof that if you do, then more will be made. You can make a difference and you can help. It needs to be pushed, it needs to be promoted, and it needs to be read. One of the most exciting things about covering this manga in particular for me was hearing what others had to say about it, either from people like myself who haven't read much Yuri manga, who are more familiar with Jump, or from people who have read more Yuri manga, who are more knowledgeable. There's a lot of different perspectives and things I thought I could learn from reading this one, so let's hear what everyone on the Axe-Files office's Discord has to say. Starting off, let's hear from people who are familiar with isekai, yuri, or villainess type manga. Demon Summoning Enthusiast mentions their experience with the otome game reincarnation and villainess isekai subgenre, finding the initial premise with the focus on Serena to be quite novel, as well as how she goes about helping its cast and using her limited magic. Where other manga might give its main characters some extremely busted spells, they point out that here Serena only has mastery over very limited magic, giving it something a little bit different to showcase. On the whole, this review also gives a lot of praise to its cast and how they developed fairly naturally, highlighting bigger emotional moments as well as smaller ones that made an impact. An interesting critique from Demon Summoning Enthusiast here is in its use of screen tones, where they comment on how their usage felt random at times. From glances at the series, it does use screen tones a lot, and while I do feel it's usually appropriate with a variety being used for different situations, at points it might show a lack of proficiency on Anakagi's behalf. While Cerulean really loved the core cast of characters and the romance elements, they also did feel the isekai elements were greatly underutilized. We never get to see much of the actual game, like what might happen to Elmia if she meets with a bad end, the thing that compels Serena to want to save her in the first place, instigating the entire story. Another thing we don't get to see much of is Serena as a character. The lack of information we have on her is brought up in this review as something people desperately wanted to know. Percy makes a solid judgment on the series about the Prince characters. Despite being the main love interests of the otome game, they're only ever used as roadblocks or to instigate conflict. There's no characterization that make them likable, never mind characters you'd want to date. I think this ties in with another criticism of theirs, which brings up Serena knowing the game, not amounting to much of anything. It really feels as though the setting at large wasn't considered very much. Super Manga Nerd takes the perspective of someone who has experience with isekai and reincarnation stories, states that they would have liked to see more of Serena's past too. Why was she reincarnated or isekai'd, and more of the world in general. I think what's expressed here ties in with a lot of these elements being potentially underutilized, which is a sentiment I saw a lot and was intertwined with Gal Maid not getting enough time to cover everything due to its cancellation. Iliades, through similar ground, found the series mostly frustrating, wanting to know more about the world, other characters' points of views, and how everything worked, leading to the series feeling a bit bare-boned. With this being said, while there was a lot of critique here, they mentioned that the desire to want to know more isn't wholly bad, as after all, the story did hook Iliades enough to interest them in the first place. So solidly, I feel like this review belongs with those that might be frustrated by its cancellation, as it clearly had more to show. It's really clear, I think, through reading the thoughts of others that a lot of what held it back for each individual was it being cancelled. With time, a lot of issues or desires from people might have been answered, and while it could have been a little more consistent or better paced, there weren't too many complaints about these elements detracting from the experience. Frustration instead wells outward, like in Sarah's review, where they express feelings of disappointment and anger towards its cancellation, as many Yuri series meet premature ends, with a lot of them not even getting as much time to spread their wings as Gal Maid did. This leads to a lot of different plot points being cut, which they wish could have been addressed if the series lasted longer. Red Ranger Wyan found its short length really kept it from being spectacular too. In their comment, they bring up Serena losing the hand and how interesting it would have been if it wasn't grown back, though the series itself does toy with this idea too in volume extras, which is quite neat. There's a few other what-if scenarios there too, showing Anakagi did care a lot, I feel. They had much more they wanted to share, but they just weren't able to do so due to the cancellation. Moving on, let's look at some comments or reviews left by those with little experience from the mentioned tropes or genres, or those who flat out dislike things like isekai to hear what they have to say. Firstly, Chima brings up not really being a fan of isekai manga, though found Gal Maid quite fun, even if the story was quite fast-paced. A pervading thought here in other reviews is that the romance being more gradual would have benefited the series, so it getting cancelled really harmed it, though many people including Chima still enjoyed what they saw too, like Justin, Astoria, and Jay Basso, who found reading something a lot different to what they would usually read quite enjoyable. Wildheart Razorfangs, while not super familiar with a lot of Villainess stories, was able to recognize how Serena's role varied the series and was a nice gateway into developing an interesting romance. I feel Razorfangs discusses the characters quite well here, especially Elmia, as a character who struggles to express their feelings, needing genuine support first to do so, though through this they also develop a fear of losing that support too, leading to some texture in her relationship with Serena. It definitely isn't perfect, as they go on to state, but yet again we have someone vouching for its strong central ideas and characters, ultimately making the series something they enjoyed. Violent comes in with another dislike of isekai series, having not much expectation or even knowing this was a Yuri manga in the first place, and while they found the start abhorrently slow and a little boring, it did gradually reel them in with its romance and political intrigue, with them finding it not too bad by the end. Nanek also hasn't read much isekai series, though found how it did implement some of its ideas was good. We've discussed how the series didn't really take full advantage of its setting, though it does try to interweave some elements or comparisons from Serena's point of view in where it can, which Nedek saw and was a fan of. As for more critical reviews, there wasn't anything particularly damning beyond a few people lacking interest in the series, like Yozakura Psycho and Melons. I think this is a testament to how generally solid the series is. It has issues, though positives like its core cast keep it enjoyable for most. Like Churt Frumpus, who found Gal Maid to be a diamond in the rough, a series with a bunch of good ideas which haven't quite been refined enough, evident by it not fully taking advantage of some of its elements like its setting, the whole reincarnation angle, and furthermore, they feel the romantic core could have been built up a little bit better. The big three enjoyed it, predominantly due to the three main girls' dynamics with each other, though found certain elements held it back, which could have led to its cancellation, namely its slow start and potentially its use of Estella, where they felt she stole the spotlight away from Serena and Elmia a bit too much. Adding on to this, Pizza Goat in their review brings up the series gradually seeing Estella's prominence wane. Perhaps this was due to the cancellation and lack of time, but certain characters like her and Elmelia's brother felt underutilized to them. Jesus Flash takes a bit of a different lens to the series' appeal and lack thereof, arriving at a consensus that it's meant to be a very light and breezy series, likening it to an indulgent fanfic. Its story structure, setting, and the characters are vehicles for setting up particular moments, when and where it wants to, rather than the whole thing being more of a cohesive narrative, and there is totally room for stories like this to exist. As Flash goes on to state how it tackles its ideas of standing up for who you are and not changing in a world that expects you to conform could be inspirational to younger queer people or provide a level of comfort. While that's all well and good, there is room for critique here too. More comfort stories, we could call them, can also be well written alongside being comfy. This leads to a core issue Flash brings up where they felt that each time an issue or conflict was raised, there would be an easy solution mitigating much of the drama, with there being no real repercussions for anything happening in the story, which I can see leading the series to feel somewhat dull for some. Looping back to the series being an easy read and something that brings comfort, we can see this is what Lumi came in for. Perky Gyaru Maids and Tsundere Villainesses, and they got exactly what they wanted, commenting here that while it might lack substance, it had all the moe yuri cuteness they wanted, and that's all that really matters sometimes. I think this is an exceptionally valid stance that I don't see all too often. It is good to be critical, though at times you should also just enjoy what you enjoy and not overcomplicate that. And this goes beyond just enjoying the series, but specifically enjoying what the series is at its core, especially when a series does deliver on its main intended front, like with Gal Maid. The main romance between the girls is the thing that the most time was spent on, and I think Kagi did a good job at making sure their end together felt somewhat conclusive despite its cancellation. One of the main things people enjoyed about this series was the two characters and their romance, so I feel like they've really succeeded on that front. Lesbians stay winning. Since Gal Maid and Villainess is a relatively new manga, only ending in the summer of 2025, it's understandable that Kagi hasn't serialized anything else. What they have been doing though is continuing to draw, with the art getting better and better. This includes doing a really nice Elmia drawing, the two main characters from Gundam The Witch from Mercury, who I adore, and a New Year's illustration featuring Serena and Elmia, showing the characters are still very dear to them. Nothing is certain, but I do feel like Kagi will probably make another attempt at creating another Yuri manga in the future based on their passion for the subject and their evolving artistic ability. With how much I enjoyed Gal Maid and Villainess, I might end up checking that out too. And thus we close out on this Valentine's Day Axe file on Gal Maid and Villainess, a very different manga to those I usually cover on the channel from its concept, genre usage, and magazine. It was a blast to cover something different and learn about other areas of the manga industry, as well as hear the thoughts of others familiar with manga like this. If you'd like to see more of this, then let me know in the comments down below, be it more Shonen Jump cancelled manga or further adventures into Yuri manga and beyond. In all honesty, it would be fun to do this for some other types of manga like Boys Love or something entirely different. If you did like this video, there are many more Axe files on the channel waiting for you to check them out, though if you'd like some different kinds of videos, I have a whole host on them covering manga. Usually it's on Shonen Jump stuff, but I do branch out now and again. I might even make more videos on Yuri manga in the future and may have something in the pipeline already, so subscribe and keep an eye open if you're interested. As always, I want to shout out my patrons for helping make this video possible. Thank you so much for all of your support. If you'd like to join them in supporting the channel, you can for as little as $1 a month, where you'll gain access to polls to decide future Axe files, where you could all gang up and make me just cover more Yuri manga in this format. There's also a library of bonus videos for patrons, and the only difference between all of the tiers is that if you pledge $3 or more, you'll get a little doodle drawn by me to accompany your name in the credits of my videos, like all of these fine folks. Thank you, Trinity, Jade, Kazukugaru, Circle Zero, Holly the Apothecary, Mayu, It's Faco, Yellowtail, Lace Slugget, Crispy Bacon, Chohenshin, Full Metal, Unquestionable, Yuzakura Psycho, Wurzel, Violent, Cactus, Joni, City Name E, Vino Burrito, Caffeine Dad, Cryonaut, Crash, 41IZ, Hong, Jamie Reynolds, Manu, Poke Emblem, James Miller, Jopa Monkey, Just a Virus, Star Sphinx, PK Broly, Fenrir Black, Elijah Espinoza, Neo Humanoid, Mark Nielsen, Electro Pirate, Jay Vasso, Three Frogs in a Trenchcoat, Sir Flash, Gay Shark, Slimy Okra, Giddista, Wavy Sky, TG Talks Manga, John Jerry 722, Andrew, Xenomat, Missile, Tara Elizabeth, Stratomega 13, Dennis Tambek, Jubei, Elise, Frog Dude, Back on Earth, Justin Maikage, Papa Aeon, Hilltop, Vako Draws, Otaku Gamer X, Deadpan, Shy Monkeys, Jonathan Dragonet, John Sanford, Color, Jaime, Strawberry Proshone, Vaz, Hallett, Ruina, Juice, Kurumi Nox, Eric Gorski, Mr. Shira, Grizz Exploder, Dextora, Enia Showo, Cheese, Emmy, Benjamin, Tenmaku Lover, Taifumi Studios, Ignate, Iliades, Gyrus, VHS Enthusiast, Kanojo, King Snacks, Sidrune, and Daniel. Thank you all so much for being patrons, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Remember to be kind and take care.